Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia and welcome back to the Overwatch League Roundup 2020 Team of the Week 14. So this Team of the Week is going to be a very interesting one because we've obviously seen a lot of fixtures this week. We've seen a lot of new faces. We've seen two, well, I wouldn't say new teams, but London aren't a new team, but they're relatively new. We haven't seen them for 10 weeks, let's be honest. And also we've seen some really interesting matchups. We've seen some really tight matches between some teams that perhaps we thought wouldn't be tight, like Toronto Defiant and the San Francisco Shock. But without further delay, let's get into this Team of the Week then. And this one is an interesting one because obviously there's going to be a standout team here. And this is the Guangzhou Charge, because the Guangzhou Charge have had a really good week, beating the High Flyers, New York Excelsior, and getting a good victory over the London Spitfire. And they didn't look bad for that victory against New York either. They really did look very, very, very good. So, occupying my first support slot will be Shu. Because, actually, Shu came very close to getting a spot last week. But he was narrowly edged out by Fielder of the Paris Eternal because of the massive impact he had last week against the Philadelphia Fusion. Was bonkers, to be quite honest. I could not recognize him. But Shu has continued his really good form going into this week, and he is looking so darn good for the Guangzhou Charge. His sleeps are on point. His bionades are on point. His nanos are on point. He is not doing much wrong right now. And it really shows that the backline of the Guangzhou Charge, despite losing Neptuno and Weir, I believe, or Weir, I forget what his name, how to say his name, but despite losing those two players to visa issues, they're still looking strong. They're looking darn strong. They're looking, you know, like a team to beat. They are on top of the May qualifiers for Asia right now, which is pretty bonkers, and no one would have expected that. So Shu has had a fantastic week, especially against New York Excelsior, and I am only expecting it to continue. He has really found fantastic form, and he is looking like one of the best supports in the league right now. But moving on to our other support, and there is a variety of options here. Funny Astro had a good week. Li Jaegong was up and down for Shanghai Dragons. Chris was okay for the Florida Mayhem, but he was okay, you know. Toby had a good week for the Seoul Dynasty. I don't think anyone can deny that. Obviously, Chara for the Charge was good, but I will give it to Moss. You might know why. It's not just because of that play. Don't get me wrong, please. Obviously, that the standout play from Moss this weekend is the 3k boop set up by Smurf against the Toronto Defiant on King's Row. But that was a very, very close match between Toronto Defiant and San Francisco Shock. And it was actually, you know, it was judged and ended up being decided on very small margins. And Moss made those margins very much in favor of the San Francisco Shock, I think, really. Like, Cruz for the Toronto Defiant was getting caught out at times. Not saying he's bad, because actually it looks like he's offered a lot to this San Francisco Shock. And he didn't have, to the Toronto Defiant, I should say. And he didn't have a bad week, don't get me wrong. But Moss was the more consistent. Moss was getting better value. And Moss can frag at times, and we saw that. Although, Moss, you know, you wouldn't have done it without Smurf. You wouldn't have done it without Smurf. Talking of Smurf, Smurf is my main tank. Smurf was really good for San Francisco Shock. He clutched multiple times. He used that Hulk to set up that boop that won him King's Row. They would not have won that map without that. It was 6-5 to the Shock. It was incredibly close. Also, he clutched on Oasis on the Wrecking Ball to keep San Francisco Shock in it, even though I think they end up losing that map anyway. But Smurf had a fantastic week. Really, really pleased with Smurf this week. And I can't think of another main tank that has stood out as much as Smurf has this week. There have been good displays. Rio, obviously. Obviously, Gesture had a fairly good week, which is something we haven't said all that much this week. Gamsu wasn't bad for the Dallas Fuel despite them losing. And Sado had a consistent week once again. But Smurf really stood out to me. And someone has knocked Fearless off, though. So that's great. That's great. Also, Shanghai played Stand 1 a lot this week. So, yeah, there is that. So, moving on to the off tank. And this was a difficult one because I really didn't think any off-tanks really stood out this week. I mean, I've seen some weeks where off-tanks have really stood out. Hanbin really early on in the season really stood out in that week. We've seen Bernard for the London Spitfire really early in the season really stand out, but not this week. I wouldn't say Marvel stood out too much for the Seoul Dynasty. I wouldn't say even like Krong for the Charge really stood out too much, nor Hanbin. But I'm going to give it to FRD of the Atlanta Reign. I think he got possibly the best value this weekend on the off-tank. Again, it's a very difficult one. I'm not going to lie. Void, again, honourable mention for the Shanghai Dragons. He was good this weekend. And also, of course, Fury for this Philadelphia Fusion and Choi Hyobin for the San Francisco Shock. Gargoyle was decent for the Florida Mayhem, but they were playing the Vancouver Titans. And yeah, it's difficult, but also McGravy of the Valiant as well. I shouldn't rule him out. But I'm going to give it to FRD. I think he had a good week. And we don't often... Atlanta Reign have kind of been not middling. That's not middling the pack. That's the wrong thing to say. But they have been not as flashy as they were last season. So I'm not... Perhaps you've not seen them as much in Team of the Weeks and things like that. But I think FRD really does deserve a spot this week. So I am going to give it to FRD. And congratulations to him. But that means we are now on to our DPS. And again, there is a lot of DPS options. Yaki had a really good display for the Florida Mayhem against the Vancouver Titans. But again, it was the Vancouver Titans. He was up against Dalton and Suna. And yeah, I mean, Dalton there wasn't too bad on the Widow on Junkertown, but it's give or take. Nero for the Guangzhou Charge has been really good. Also, London Spitfire Glister. Glister has had a decent week. He didn't get outclassed against Guangzhou Charge too much, although he did on the last map. I think it was more Although that was causing problems for London Spitfire there. But I'm going to give it to Lip. A hit scan roll, I should say, is going to go to Lip, because Lip got a lot of value on the Shanghai Dragons this week, despite Shanghai losing to Seoul. And there will be an honourable mention for one of the DPS of Seoul. Prophet did have a good week as well, though. I must say that Prophet has bounced back massively. But it's because the meta has favoured Seoul. Let's be honest, they haven't been forced into an Echo Dive or anything like that. So, going to the Sombra Tracer, going to the Mei, going to the McCree, they have been much better. And much more able to keep up with the rest of the league and the rest of the teams that they've been up against. But I don't really see another person that has stood out quite as much as Lip. I was going to do something a little bit special and go for two players that have very similar hero pools, but I didn't in the end. And perhaps that's not the right thing to do, but I still think Lip was very, very good for the Shanghai Dragons this week, so I am going to give that spot to him. But lastly, I want to talk about the more utility role, what we see people probably picking up the Sombra and the Mei and things like that. And there's three people I put here. The first is Fitz. And Fitz I was going to put in the Lip spot originally, but then I kind of decided on Lip. And the reason I put Fitz here is because Fitz, his Hanzo, was filthy against the Shanghai Dragons. Absolutely filthy. Fitz had a really good week. I think this is one of his best displays I've seen Fitz have, if not his best display. I think he was really, really good against the Seoul Dynasty, and I hope that sort of form continues. His Hanzo, especially on King's Row, was bonkers. It was just bonkers. And it's good to see that we've got some Seoul Dynasty DPS that are really popping off now. Prophet had a good week. Fitz had a really good week. And I really wanted to make sure that I mentioned him here because I didn't want to leave him out because I was originally going to have him in the main lineup. Obviously, and I got a bit of a rating for this the other week, I forgot to mention him. It was Rascal. Yeah, I know. But Rascal is always very good. And Rascal had another great week this week. And what I love about Rascal is the fact that he is just so darn flexible. He can play whatever he likes and pop off on it. And to have a player like that, it's just incredible. And when you think about the teams that Rascal's been at, he's been at the Dallas Fuel and he's been at London Spitfire. Boy, those teams must be regretting losing him. Like, London, whew, that would have been, oh dear. But San Francisco Shock are very lucky to have a player like Rascal, and he is very, very good, but he's not actually going to get the place. Because it's going to go to Eileen. So Eileen was playing a lot of Sombra for the Guangzhou Charge this week. And he also, I think, played a Dash Widow, if I remember rightly. Unless they subbed in Happy. I can't remember. I think it was Eileen, though. And he was very, very good. His EMP usage was, like, I think that probably the best EMP usage I've seen this weekend, perhaps. because he was so good. He was always getting really good value out of his EMPs, but not only that, he was getting really good value out of just base hacks, and he was getting really good value out of just going into the backline and just picking people off. And that's not the normal way for Sombra to work. Normally you go into the backline, you pepper people, you get out, you've got your ult charge, but you haven't necessarily killed people. But Eileen was getting value in a backline like Tracer was getting value at times. And that's pretty bonkers. And New York Excelsior, London Spitfire did not know how to handle it. And it's just very impressive what I've seen Eileen do this week. And if he can maintain this form alongside the likes of Nero and the rest of the Guangzhou Charge squad, obviously Shu I mentioned earlier, then this Guangzhou Charge is a team that we have seriously underestimated. And I mean seriously underestimated. So yeah, really impressed with the Guangzhou Charge this week. Eileen, Shu, Rio, Krong, all of you, Chara and Nero, have all been really good this week. And they all deserve a mention because, damn, Charge are on the up. Can anyone stop the Charge? That's the question, isn't it? But that is my team of the week. Shu, Moth, Smurf, FRD, Lip and Eileen, with honourable mentions to Toby, Rascal and Fitz, along with Choi Hoban, Fury and a bunch of others. But I'm going to leave it here for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you'd like to give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.